desert. He decided to try his SUV, a little bit of cross-country travel. He had great fun beaming over the badlands, in the sand, got lost in a big rock, and then he couldn't get started again. There were no cell phones, no was anywhere near, so cell phone was useless. He had no family. His parents died a few years ago in an auto accident, and his few friends had no idea he was out here. He stayed with the car for a day or so, but his one bottle of water ran out and he was getting thirsty. He thought maybe he knew the direction back, but no. He paid attention to the sun and thought he'd figured out which way was north, so he decided to start walking. He figured he'd only have to walk about 30 miles or so and he'd be back to the small town he'd gotten gas at last. He thinks about walking at night to avoid the heat and sun, but based on how dark it actually was the night before, and given that he had no flashlight, he was afraid that he'd break a leg or step on a rattlesnake. So he puts on some sunblock, puts the rest in his pocket for reapplication. Later, brings an umbrella he had in the back of the SUV with him to give him a little shade, pours the windshield wiper fluid into his water bottle in case he gets that desperate, brings his pocket knife in case he finds a cactus that looks like it might have water in it, and heads out in the direction he thinks is right. He walks for the entire day, but at the end of the day, he's really thirsty. He's been sweating all day and his lips are starting to crack. He's reapplied the sunblock twice and tried to stay under the umbrella, but he still feels sunburn. The windshield wiper fluid sloshing in the bottle in his pocket is really getting tempting, though he knows that it's mainly water and ethanol and colouring, but he also knows that they add some kind of poison to it to keep people from drinking it. He wonders what the poison is and whether the poison would be worse than dying of thirst. He pushes on, trying to get to that small town before dark. By the end of the day, he starts getting worried. He figures he's been walking at least 3 miles an hour, according to his watch, for over 10 hours. That means that if his estimate was right, he should be close to the town, but he doesn't recognize any of this. He had crossed a dry creek bed a mile or two back and doesn't remember coming through it in his SUV. He figures that maybe he just got his direction off a little and the dry creek bed was just off to the side of the path. He tells himself that he's close and that after dark he'll start seeing the town lights over one of these hills, and that'll be all he needs. As it gets dim enough that he starts stumbling over small rocks and things, he finds a spot and sits down to full dark and the lights, town lights. Full dark comes before he knows it, and he must have dozed off. He stands back up and turns all the way around. He sees nothing but stars. He wakes up the next morning feeling absolutely lousy. His eyes are gummy and his mouth and nose feel as if they're full of sand. He's so thirsty he can't even swallow. He barely got any sleep because it was so cold. He'd forgotten how cold it was at night in the desert, and he hadn't noticed the night before because he'd been in his car. He knows the rule of threes. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Then you die. Some people make it a little longer in the best situations, but the desert heat and having to walk and sweat isn't the best situation to be without water. He figures unless he finds water, this is his last day. He rinses his mouth out with a little of the windshield wiper fluid. He waits a little while after spreading that little bit out to see if his mouth goes numb or he feels dizzy or something. Has his mouth gone numb? Is it just his mind? He's not sure. He'll go a little further And if he doesn't find water, he'll try drinking some of the fluid. Then he has to face his next, harder question. Which way does he go from here? Does he keep walking the same way he was yesterday, assuming that he still knows the direction that is? Or does he keep trying a new direction? He has no idea what to do, looking at the hills and the dunes around him. He thinks he knows the direction he was heading before. Just going by feeling, he points himself somewhere to the left or right of that and starts walking. As he walks, the day starts heating up. The desert, too cold just a few hours before, soon becomes an oven again. He sweats a little at first and then stops. He starts getting worried at that. When you stop sweating, he knows that means you're in trouble, usually right before heat stroke. He decides it's time to try the windshield wiper fluid. Can't wait any longer, and if he passes out, he's dead. He stops in the shade of a large rock and takes out the water bottle, opens it and takes a mouthful. He swallows it, making it last as long as he can. It feels good. It feels so good in his dry and cracked throat. He doesn't even care about the taste. He takes another mouthful and makes it last. Slowly, he drinks half the bottle. He figures that since he's drinking it, he might as well drink enough to make a difference and keep himself from passing out. He's worrying about the denaturing of the wiper fluid. If it kills him, it kills him. If he didn't drink it, he'd die anyway. Besides, he's pretty sure that whatever substance denatures the fluid, it's just designed to make you sick. Their way of keeping wineries from buying cheap wiper fluid with ethanol content. He can handle throwing up if it comes to that. He walks in the dry, hot, windless desert sand, rocks, hills, dunes, the occasional cactus or dried bush, no sign of water. Sometimes you'll see a little movement to one side or the other, but whatever moved is usually gone before he can focus his eye on it. Probably birds, lizards or mice, maybe snakes, though they usually move at night. He's careful to stay away from the movements. After a while, he begins to stagger. He's not sure if it's fatigue, heat stroke, finally catching up with him, or maybe he was wrong, and the denaturing of the wiper fluid was worse than he thought. He tries to steady himself and keep going. After more walking, he comes to a large stretch of sand. This is good. He knows he passed over a stretch of sand in the SUV. He remembers doing donuts in it, or at least he thinks he remembers it. He's getting woozy enough and tired enough that he's not sure what he remembers anymore, or if he's hallucinating, but he thinks he remembers it. So he heads off into it, trying to get to the other side, hoping that it gets him closer to the little town. He was heading down for town, wasn't he? He thinks he was. He's not sure anymore. He's not even sure how long he's been walking anymore. Is it still morning? Has it moved into the afternoon? The sun is going down. It must be afternoon. It seems like it's been too long, just since he started out. He walks the sand. After a while, he comes to a big dune in the sand. This is bad. He doesn't remember any dunes driving over the sand in his SUV, or at least doesn't think he remembers any. This is bad, but he has no other direction to go. Too late to turn back, he thinks. That he'll get to the top of the dune and see if he can see anything from there. That helps him find the town. He keeps going up. Halfway up, he slips on bad footing. The sand For the second or third time, he falls to his knees. He doesn't feel like getting up. He'll just fall down again. So he keeps going up the dune on his hands and knees while crawling. If his throat wasn't so dry, he'd laugh. He finally got into the hackneyed image of a man lost in the desert, crawling through the sand on his hands and knees. It would be the perfect image, he imagined, if only his clothes were more ragged and the people call in the desert in the cartoons always had ragged clothes, but his lasted without any rips so far. Someone will probably find his desiccated corpse half buried in the sand years from now, and his clothes will still be in fine shape, a good wash, and they'd be wearable again. He washed his throat, wet enough to laugh. He coughs a little instead, and it hurts. He finally makes it to the top of the sand dune. Now that he's at the top, he struggles a little, but manages to stand up and look around. All he sees is sand. Sand and more sand. Behind him, about a mile away, he thinks he sees the rocky ground. He left to head into the sand. Ahead of him, more dune, more sand. This isn't where he drove the SUV. This is hell. Close enough. Again, he doesn't know what to do. He decides to drink the rest of the wiper fluid while figuring it out. He takes the bottle and removing the cap. When glancing inside and sees something in the sand at the bottom of the dune. Off to the side he sees a strange something. It's a flat area in the sand. He stops taking the cap off and looks closer. The area seems to be circular and it's darker than the sand. And there seems to be something in the middle of it, but he can't tell what it is. He looks as hard as he can and still can't from here. He's going to have to go down there and have a look. He puts the bottle back into his pocket and starts stumbling down the dune. After a few steps, he realizes he's in trouble. He's not going to be able to keep tottering steps. As he falls, starts to roll down the dune. The sand is so hot, when his body hits it that for a minute, he thinks he's caught on fire. On the way down, like a movie car wreck, flashing into flames as it goes over the cliff before it even hits the ground. He closes his eyes and mouth, covers his face with his hands, and waits to start rolling. He stops at the bottom of the dune. After a minute or two, he finds enough energy to try to sit up and get the sand out of his face and clothes. When he clears his eyes, he looks around to make sure that the dark spot in the sand is still there. He hasn't just imagined it. So, seeing the large, flat, dark spot on the sand is still there, he begins to crawl towards it. He get up and walk towards it, but he doesn't have the energy to get up and walk right now. He must be in the final stages of dehydration, he figures, as he crawls. If this place in the sand doesn't have any water, he'd likely never make it anywhere else. This is his last chance. He gets closer and closer, but still can't see what's in the middle of the dark area. His eyes won't quite focus anymore for some reason, and lifting his head up to look takes so much effort that he gives up trying. He keeps crawling and finally reaches the area you see from the dune. It takes him a minute crawling on it before he realizes he's no longer in the sand. He's crawling on some kind of dark stone with some kind of marking on it, a pattern cut into the stone. He's too tired to stand up and see what the pattern is, so he just keeps crawling. He's crawling towards the center where his blurry eyes still see something. In the beginning, in the middle of the dark stone area, his mind detached in a strange way. He notes that either his hands and knees are burned by the sand, but they no longer feel pain. All that is dark stone in the middle, burning desert, and punishing sun again, doesn't seem to be hot. It almost feels cool. He considers lying down on a nice, cool surface. Cool, dark stone. Not a good sign. He must be hallucinating this. He's probably in the middle of a patch of sand already lying face down and dying. just imagining this whole thing, a desert mirage. Soon the beautiful woman carrying pitchers of water will come up and start giving him a drink. Then you'll know he's gone. Starts again lying down on the cool stone. If he's going to die here in the middle of this hallucination, he really wants to see what's at the center before he goes. He keeps crawling. It's the third time he hears the voice before he realizes what he's hearing. He could swear that something just said, "Greetings, traveler. You don't look well. Do you hear me?" He stops crying. He tries to look up from where he is on his hands and knees, but it's too much effort to lift his head. So, he tries something different. He leans back and tries to sit up on the stone. After a few seconds, he catches his balance, falls falling on his face and sits up. He tries to focus his eyes. Blurrily, he rubs his eyes with the back of his hand and tries again. It's better this time. Yep, you can see. He's in the middle of a large, flat, dark expanse of stone. Directly next to him, about 3 feet away, is a white post, about 2 inches in diameter, and sticking up 4 or 5 feet out of the ground. Stone at an angle, wrapped around it is a white rod. Tail with a rattlesnake is half of it, seemingly ready to start rattling. Is what may be a 15-foot-long desert diamondback rattlesnake looking directly at him. He stares at the snake in shock. He doesn't have the energy to get up and run anywhere. He doesn't even have the energy to crawl away. This is it, his final resting place. No matter what happens, he's not going to be able to move from this spot. Well, at least dying of a bite from this monster would be quicker than dying of thirst. He'll face his end like a man. He struggles to sit up a little straighter. The snake keeps watching him. He lifts one hand and shakes it at the snake's direction feebly. The snake watches the hand for a moment and then goes back to watching the man moving into it. Maybe the snake had no interest in biting him. Hand routed. Maybe he wasn't going to die. The snake cried off. The wolf thought he'd heard a voice. He was still very woozy. He was likely to pass out soon. The sun was beating down on him. We know he was now cool on the stone. He didn't think. He didn't have anything to drink. And maybe he actually heard a voice. The stone didn't look natural. Or the white post sticking out of it. Someone had to be nearby. They built this. Maybe they were still nearby. Maybe it was them who talked. Or maybe the rattlesnake was their pet. And that's why he wasn't biting. He tried to clear it up his throat to say hello, but his throat is too dry. All that comes out is a coughing, a wheezing sound. There's no way he's going to be able to talk like this without his bucket and the bottle with the white fluid is still there. He pulls out the bottle, almost losing his balance and falling on his back in the process. This isn't good. He doesn't have much time left by his reckoning. He manages to get the bottle to his lips and pour some of the fluid into his mouth. He sloshes it around and then swallows. Coughs a little. His throat feels better. Maybe he can talk now. He tries again, ignoring the snake. He turns to look around him, hoping to spot the owner of this place, and croaks out, "Hello. Anyone there?" He hears from his side, "Greetings. What is it you want?" He turns his head back towards the snake. That's what it seems to come from. The only thing he can think of is that there must be a speaker hidden underneath the snake, or maybe he decides to try, asking for help. "Please," he croaks again, suddenly feeling dizzy. "I love not to be thirsty anymore. I've been a long time without water. Can you help me?" Looking in the direction of the snake, hoping to see where the voice is coming from. This time he is shocked to see the snake rear back, open his mouth and speak. He hears it say, as dizziness overtakes him, and he falls face first on the stone. Very well. Coming up. A piercing pain shoots through his shoulder. Suddenly he is awake. He sits up and grabs his shoulder, wincing at the throbbing pain. He's momentarily distorted, looks around, then remembers across the sand. Dark area of stone. The snake. He sees the snake still wrapped around tilted white post, still looking at him. He reaches up and feels his shoulder where it hurts. It feels slightly wet. He pulls his fingers away and looks at the blood. He feels the shoulder again. The shirt feels like there are 2 holes in it. 2 puncture holes. They match up. 2 aching spots of pain on the shoulder. He had been bitten by the snake. He'll feel better in a minute. He looks up. The snake is talking. He hadn't dreamt it. Suddenly he noticed he's not dizzy anymore. And more importantly, he's not thirsty anymore at all. Have I died? Is this the afterlife? Are you biting me in the afterlife? Sorry about that, but I had to bite you, says the snake. That's the way I work. It all comes through the bite. Think of it like natural medicine. You bit me to help me? Why aren't I thirsty anymore? Did you give me a drink before you bit me? How can I drink enough while unconscious to be not thirsty anymore? I haven't had a drink for over 2 days, except for the little white fluid. Hold it. How in the world does a snake talk? Are you real? Are you some sort of Disney animation? No, says the snake. I'm real. As real as you, or anyone is anyway. I didn't give you a drink. I bet you that's how it works. It's what I do. I bite. I don't have hands to give you a drink. Even if I had water just sitting around here. The man sits down for a minute. Here he was in the middle of the day. Some strange stone that should be hot, but isn't, trying to talk to a snake that could talk back and had just bitten him. And he felt better. Great, he was still starved and exhausted. Much better. He was no longer thirsty. He started sweating again, very slightly. It felt hot in the sun. It was starting to get lower in the sky, and the cool stone beneath him was a relief. You could notice now he was no longer dying of thirst. I might suggest that we take care of the methanol you have in your system. The next request. I can guess why you drank it. I'm not sure how much you drank or how much methanol is left in the white fluid. That stuff is nasty. It'll make you go blind in a day or 2. You drank enough of it. Next request, said the man. Pulled his hand back to the shoulder. Hurting shoulder. Backed away from the snake a little. That's how it works, if you like. That is, you get 3 requests. Call them wishes, if you want. The snake has his own joke, and the man drew back a little further from the mere show of fangs. But there are rules, the snake continued. The first request is free. The second requires an agreement of secrecy. The third requires the binding of responsibility. The snake looked at the man seriously. By the way, the snake said suddenly, my name is Nathan. Old Nathan, Samuel used to call me. Gave me that name. Most around here used to call me the snake. But that got old, and Samuel wouldn't stand for it. He said that anything that could talk needed a name. So he began to grin. Shouldn't call me names, you were. Again, Snake grinned. Sorry if I don't offer to shake, but I think you understand. My shake sounds somewhat threatening. The snake gives a rattle. Gives this rattle a little shake. My name is Jack, said the man, trying to absorb this. Jack Sampson. Can I ask you a question? Jack said suddenly. What happened to the poison? In your bite. Why aren't I dying now? How did you do that? What do you mean by that's how you work? There's more than one question. It's more than one question, Prince Nathan. But I'll also try to answer all of them. First, yes, you can ask me a question. The snake grin gets wider. Second, the poison is in you. It's changed you. You now no longer need to drink. That's what you asked for. Or well, technically you asked not to be thirsty anymore, but anymore is such a vague term. I decided to make it permanent. Now, as long as you live, you shouldn't need to drink much at all. Your body will conserve water very efficiently. You should be able to get enough water just from the food you eat. Much like a creature of the desert, you've been changed. So the third question, Nate continues, you're still dying. besides the effects of methanol in your system, you're a man and men are mortal. In your current state, I give you no more than 50 years. Assuming you get out of this desert alive, that is. Nate seemed very amused at his own humour, and continued, his grin widening. As for the fourth question, Nate said, looking more serious, as far as Jack can tell. Jack was just now working on his ability to read talking snake emotions from snake facial features. First, you had to agree to make a second request and become bound by the secrecy. Oh, I can't tell you. Wait, jerked Jack. Isn't this the part where you tell me you're going to kill me? I thought that was implied. Nate continued to look serious. Yeah. Jack leaned back a little. As he began, he remembered again that he was talking to a 15-foot poisonous reptile with a reputation for having a nasty temper. So, what is this bound by secrecy stuff? And can you really stop the effect of methanol? Jack thought for a second. And what do you mean methanol anyway? I thought these days that they use ethanol in last food, just nature. I mean, I don't really know, said Nate. I haven't gotten out in a while. Maybe they do. All I know is I smell methanol in your breath, and that bottle in your pocket, and the blue color liquid pulled out to drink. That sort of helped me guess what the white fluid. I assume that the still color white fluid blue. Yeah, they do, Jack. I figured, replied Nate. As for being bound by secrecy, for the fulfillment of your next request, you'll be bound to say nothing about me, this place, or any other information I tell you after that. When you decide to go back out, you won't be allowed to talk about me, write about me, your sign language, charades, even act in a way that will lead someone to guess correctly about me. You'll be bound to secrecy. Of course, I'll also ask you to promise not to give me away. I'm guessing now you're a man of your word. I never test the binding anyway. You won't notice. Nate said that last part with utter confidence. Jack, who always prided himself on being a man of his word, felt a little nervous. Hey Nate, who are you? How do you know that? Are you omniscient or something? Well, Jack said. Nate, sadly, can't tell you unless you make that second request. Nate looked away for a minute and looked back. Well, okay, said Jack. What is it about a second request? What can I ask for? Are you allowed to tell me that? Sure, Nate said brightly. You'll have to ask for changes to yourself, like wishes, but they can only affect you. Oh, before you ask, I can't give you immortality or omniscience, or omnipresence, for that matter, though I might be able to make you gaseous, and yet remain alive, and then you can spread out throughout the atmosphere and sort of be omnipresent, but what could that be? You still wouldn't be omniscient, and that could only focus on one thing at a time. Not very useful of you. Nate stopped when he realized Jack was staring. Anyways, what you need, Nate? Probably suggest giving you permanent good health. So you can get the effect of methanol now in your system. You'll be immune to most poisons and diseases. You tend to live for a very long time, barring accident, of course, and even have a tendency to recover from accidents. Well, it would seem like a good choice from me. Cure the methanol poisoning. Jack, keep me healthy for a long time. Doesn't sound that bad at all. I had to be aggressive about change to me. Can't ask to be rich, right? It's not really a change to me. Right, not a Nate. Got asked to be a genius and permanently healthy? Jack asked. Hopefully. That takes 2 requests, Jack. Yeah, I figured so, said Jack. But I could ask to be a genius. I could ask to be the smartest scientist in the world, or the best athlete. Well, I could make you very smart, Nate, but that wouldn't necessarily make you the best scientist in the world. I could make you very athletic, but I wouldn't make you the best athlete either. You heard about saying that 90% of genius is hard work. Well, there's some truth to that. I can give you talent, but I can't make you work hard. It depends on what you decide to do with it. Said Jack. Okay, I think I understand. Got a third request after this one. Maybe. It depends on what you decide then. There are more rules for the third request I can only tell you about after the second request. You know how it goes. Nate looked like he'd shrugged if he'd had shoulders. Okay, well, since I'd rather not be blind in a day or two, and permanent health doesn't sound too bad, then consider my second request official. If I need to sign in blood or something, No, said Nate. Just hold out your hand, or heel, or whatever part you want me to bite. But I have to bite you again. Like I said, that's how it works. Poison, you know? Nate said apologetically. Jack winced a little and felt his shoulder where the last bite was. Hey, it didn't hurt anymore. Just like the native said. That made Jack feel a little better about the biting business, but still while a 15-foot rattlesnake stuck his fangs in you. Sounds unnerving. Jack stood up, ignoring how good it felt to be able to stand again, and the hunger started to gnaw at his stomach. Jack tried to decide where he wanted to get bitten, despite knowing that it wouldn't hurt for long. Jack knew this wasn't going to be easy. Hey Jack, Nate said suddenly, looking past Jack towards the shed behind him. Is that someone else coming up over there? Jack spun around to look. Who else could be out here in the middle of nowhere? Then, bringing food? Wait a minute. There was no one out there. What was Nate? Jack let out a bellow as he felt two fangs sink into his rear end through his jeans. Jack sat down carefully, favouring his more tender buttock. I would have decided eventually, Nate. I was just thinking about it. You didn't have to hoodwink me like that. I've been doing this a long time, Jack said Nate, confidently. You humans have a hard time sitting still when a snake wants to bite you, especially with my size, and besides, admit it, it's only been a couple of minutes and it already doesn't hurt anymore, does it? That's because of the health benefit with this one. I told you that too. Quickly. Oh, yeah, hold still, Jack. It's the principle of the thing. Nobody likes being bitten in the bite. Couldn't you have gotten my calf something instead? More meat than a typical human bite, replied Nate. Unless chance you accidentally kicked me or moved at the last second. You're right, so tell me. All these are wonderful secrets I am now qualified to have. Okay, said Nate. Do you want to ask questions first, or do you want me to just start talking? Start talking, said Jack. I'll sit here and try not to think about food. But go try to rustle up some food for you first, if you'd like, answered Nate. Hey, you didn't tell me you had food around here, Nate. Jack jumped up. What do we have? Am I in walking distance of the town, or can you magically whip up food along with your other powers? Jack was almost shouting with excitement. His stomach had been growling for hours. I was thinking more like I could catch you something, flush something out of its hole, and bite it for you, and you could skin and eat it. Assuming you still have a knife, replied Nate. With a grin that Jack was starting to get used to. Thinking, sitting back down. I think I'll pass. I can last a little longer before I am desperate enough to eat desert rats or whatever else I find out here. There's nothing to burn. I just have to eat it raw. No, thanks. Just talk. Okay, replied Nate, still grinning. But I better hurry before it starts. But you start looking at me like food. Nate rolled back a little. I looked around for a second and then continued. You, Jack, are sitting in the middle in the Garden of Eden. Jack looked down at the sand dunes and looked back at Nate skeptically. Oh, that's the best I can figure. Anyway, Jack, said Nate, stand up and look at the symbol on the rock here. Nate gestured around the dark stone he was sitting on with his nose. Jack sat up and looked carved big in the stone. And the best was a representation of a large tree. A little pole Nate wrapped around was coming out of the trunk. The tree right below the main branches of the trunk to reach out across the stone. It was very well done. It looked more like a tree had been reduced to almost 2 dimensions and embedded in the stone there, where it was. Instead of less like a carving. Jack walked around, looked at the details in the fading light of the sun. Wish he'd looked at it while the sun was high in the sky. Wait, the sun was setting. That meant you have to walk. He's going to have to spend the night here. Jack looked around the desert for a little bit and then came back and stood next to Nate. With the excitement, he almost forgot. Nate, said Jack. Which way is it? Back to town. How far? Eventually you're going to have to head back, and I'm not sure I'll be able to survive by eating raw desert critters for long. And even if I did, I'm not sure I'd want to. It's about 30 miles that way. Nate pointed. He was right along the south. The sun is fried. Jack could how the direction was at right angles to the way he'd been going. He was crawling. Yeah, but that's 30 miles by the way the crow flies. It's about 40 by the way the man walks. Should be able to do it in about half a day with improved endurance. If he head out early tomorrow. Jack looked at the way the snake had pointed for a few seconds more, and then set back down. It was getting dark. Not much he could do about heading out right now. And besides, we were just about to get the interesting stuff. Garden of Eden. Best you could figure it. Well, yeah, as best as I and Samuel could figure it. Anyway, said Nate, I figured out the story. Just got a little mixed up, you know. Snake and tree offering temptations, making bargains, that kind of stuff, but we could never quite figure out how the Hebrews found this spot from across the ocean. Worried about that for a while. Garden of Eden, huh? Said Jack. How long have you been here, Nate? No idea really, replied Nate. A long time. It never occurred to me to come here until recently. And then, of course, it was too late. But I do remember this place was green, so I figured it'd been thousands of years at least. So, you're the snake that tempted Eve? Beats me, said Nate. Maybe. I can't remember. If it's the first one of your kind that I talked to, was female or not. You never got a name. But, could have been. And I suppose you could have considered me offering your grant request a temptation. Look, I've already had refusals. How did you get here then? And, is it a white paw stuck on the stone there? Dad left me here. Or I assume it was my dad. It was another snake, much bigger than I was back then. I remember talking to him, but I don't remember if it was in the language or just kind of understanding what was wanted. One day he brought me here to the stone and told me about it, and asked me to do something for him. I talked it over with him for a while, and agreed. I've been here ever since. What about this place, Jack? And what did he ask you to do? Well, you see, this ball here sticking out of the stone. Nate loosened the coil around the total white ball, showed Jack where it centered in the stone. The pole was tilted about 45-degree angle. It seemed to enter the stone at 18 inches slot. Cut into the stone. Jack leaned down and looked. The slot was dark, and the pole went down into it as far as Jack could see. In the dim light, he reached up to touch the pole, but Nate was suddenly there in the way. You can't touch that yet, said Jack, said Nate. Why not? Asked Jack. I haven't explained it to you yet, replied Nate. Well, it kind of looks like a lever or something, said Jack. You push it that way, and it would move in the slot. Yep, that's what it is, replied Nate. So, what does it do? End the world? Asked Jack. No, said Nate. Nothing that drastic. It just ends humanity. I call it the lever of doom. The last few words, they had a deeper, ringing tone. He tried to look serious for a few seconds and gave up and grinned. Jack was initially startled by Nate's announcement, but when Nate grinned, Jack laughed. Huh? The only time you had me there fooled for a second. What does it really do? Oh, it really ends humanity. Like I said, spoke Nate. I just thought the voice I used was funny. Didn't you? It continued to grin. A lever to end humanity? Asked Jack. What in the world was that for? Why would anyone need to end humanity? Well, replied Nate. You get the idea that maybe humanity was an experiment. Or maybe the big guy just thought it would be a good idea in case humanity started going really bad. Should be a way to end it. I'm not really sure. All I know is the rules and guesses that Samuel and I had back then as to why it's here. I didn't think to ask back when I started here. Rules? What rules? Asked Jack. The rules are that I can't tell anyone about it or let them touch it unless they agree to be bound by secrecy, by it, and that only a human one can be bound in that way, one human at a time. Jack looked somewhat shocked. You mean I could pull the lever right now? You'd let me end humanity? Yep, replied Nate, if you wanted to. Nate looked at Jack carefully. Do you want to, Jack? No, said Jack, stepping a little further back from the lever. Why in the world would anyone want to end humanity? It would take a psychotic to want that, or worse, a suicidal psychotic. But because it would kill him too, wouldn't it? Yep, replied Nate. Being as he'd be human too. too. Anyone ever seriously considered it? Asked Nate. Any of those bound to secrecy, that is? Well, of course. I think they've all seriously considered it, at one time or another. Being given that kind of responsibility makes you sit down and think. Also, I'm told Samuel considered it several times. He'd often get disgusted with humanity and come out here and just hold the lever for a while. But he never pulled it. We wouldn't be here. Nate grinned some more. Jack sat down. Well, back to the lever. He looked thoughtful and puzzled at the same time. After a bit he said, "So, this makes me the judge of humanity. I get to decide whether they keep on going or just end. Me. That seems to be it. Agreed, Nate. What kind of criteria do I use?" Asked Jack. "How am I supposed to make this decision? Am I supposed to decide if they're good, or too many of them are bad, or they're going the wrong way? Is there some set of rules for that?" "Nope," replied Nate. "You just pretty much have to decide on your own. It's up to you." However, undecided. "I guess you're just supposed to know. But what if I get mad at someone or someone bumps me and I feel horrible? Couldn't I make a mistake? How do I know that I won't screw up?" Nate gave his tail a little shrug. "You won't. You don't. You just have to try your best, Jack." Jack sat there for a while, staring off into the desert. It was rapidly getting dark, chewing on a fingernail. Suddenly Jack turned around and looked at the snake. "Nate, was Samuel the one who bound for this evil before me?" "Yep," replied Nate. "He was a good guy. Talked to me a lot, taught me to read and brought me books. I think I still have a good pile of them buried in the sand around here somewhere. I still miss him. He died a few months ago." "Sounds like a good guy," agreed Jack. "How did he handle this when you first told him? What did he do?" "Well," said Nate, "he sat down for a while and thought about it for a bit, and then asked me questions, much like you did." "What did he ask you, if you're allowed to tell me?" "He asked me about the third request." "Aha." There's Jack's turn to grin. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him the rules for the third request. That, get a third request, you have to agree. It's the whole thing. That, if it ever comes to the point that you'll really think humanity should be ended, that you'll come here and end it. You won't avoid it. You won't go about it. You'll be bound to it, too, Jack." Jack looked back into the darkness for a while. He watched him, waiting. Nate continued, Jack, quietly. "What did Samuel ask for with this third request?" He sounded like he was grinning again, as he replied also, quietly, "Wisdom. Extra wisdom. As much as I could give him." "Okay," said Jack, suddenly standing up and facing away from him. "Give it to me, Nate." Nate looked at Jack's backside. Give what, Jack?" "Give me that wisdom. The same stuff you gave Samuel asked for. If it helped him too, maybe it'll help me too." Jack turned his head to look back over his shoulder at me. "It did help him, right?" he said. "It did," replied Nate, but he seemed a little quiet afterward. He had a lot to think about. "Well, I can see that," said Jack. "So give it to me." Jack turned around to face away from Nate. Nate was slightly tensed up. Jack watched Nate tense, with a little bit of exasperation. He bit Jack. No, Jack would like to jump out of his skin and maybe hurt both of them. Remember that. He'll be bound to destroy humanity if it ever looks like he needs it, right, Jack? "Yeah, I got that," replied Jack. His eyes squeezed tightly, Jack, body tense, not knowing, changed direction in his voice. He continued. Nate from his new position. "Do you remember that you're bright purple and grow horns and extra eyes?" "Yeah." "Hey, wait a minute," said Jack, turning side, straightening up and turning around. "Purple?" You could see Nate stood in the moonlight. Jack could see the lever extended up from its slot in the rock without the snake wrapped to it. Jack heard from behind him Nate's "Just kidding," right before he felt an unfamiliar piercing pain this time in the other buttock. Jack sat on the edge of the dark stone, rapidly cooling air, his feet extended out into the sand. He stared out into the darkness, listening. The wind stirred the sand occasionally. On his back there would be different. Nate had left for a little while, come back with a desert-shaped rodent ball somewhere in its middle. It was now wrapped around the lever, his tongue flickering out in the desert night lights. the only sign he was still awake. Occasionally, Jack, with his toes absentmindedly digging in the sand while he thought, would ask Nate a question. Without turning around, Nate, do accidents count? Nate lifted his head a little. What do you mean, Jack? No accidents. If I accidentally fall in the lever without meaning to, does that still violate humanity? I'm pretty sure it does, Jack. I suggest you be careful about that if you start to feel wobbly, said Nate, with some amusement. A little later, does it have to be me? Pulls the lever, asked Jack. That's a rule, Jack. Nobody else can pull it. No, Jack shook his head. I mean, does it have to be my hand? Could I pull the lever with a rope around it, or push it with a stick, or throw a rock? Yes, those things should work, replied Nate, though I'm not sure how complicated you can get. Samuel thought about trying to build some kind of remote control for it once, but gave up. Eventually, everything he built would be gone by the next day. He was touching a stone all over it. I told him that in the past others have been bound to try to bury the lever so they wouldn't attempt to pull it. And every time, the stones or sand or whatever had disappeared. Well, said Jack. Cool. Jack leaned back until only his elbows kept him off the stone and looked up into the sky. Nate, how long did Samuel live? One of his wishes was for health too, right? Yes, replied Nate. It was. He lived 167 years, Jack. Well, 167. That's almost 140 years than I'll live, if I live that as long. Do you know what he died of, Nate? He died of getting tired of living, Jack, Nate said, sounding somewhat sad. Jack turned his head to look at Nate in the starlight, and then looked back. Samuel knew he wasn't going to be able to stay in society. He figured that they'd eventually seeing him alive and start questioning him. So he decided that he'd disappear for a while. He faked his death once, but changed his mind. He decided it was too early and that he could stay for a little longer. He wasn't very fond of mankind, but he liked the attention most of the time anyway. His daughter and wife dying almost did him in though. He didn't stay in society much longer after that. He eventually came out here to spend time talking and thinking about pulling the lever. A few months ago he told me he had enough. It was his time. And then he just died. Asked Jack. Nick shook his head. Hello. He made it a fourth request, Jack. It's the only one thing you can ask for. Fourth request, the last part. After a bit, Nate continued. He told me that he was tired, and that it was time. He assured me that someone new would show up soon. They always had. After another pause, Nate finished. Samuel's body disappeared off the stone with the sunrise. Jack lay down and looked at the sky, leaving Nate, along with his memories. It was a long time until Jack's breathing evened out through sleep. Jack woke up with the sunrise the next morning. He was a little chilled with the morning desert air, but overall was feeling pretty good. All except for his stomach, which was crumbling. He'd be willing to eat a raw desert rat. He still wasn't willing to eat a raw desert rat. So, after getting directions down from Nate and making sure he knew how to get back, reassuring Nate that he'd be back soon, Jack started a long walk back to town. It was new help and Nate's good directions. He made it back easily. Like, caught a bus back to the city and showed up for work the next day. The lawyers were aware with the story about getting lost in the desert and walking back out. For the next couple of days, Jack talked to a friend with a tow truck, and then they headed back into the desert with him to help fetch the SUV. They found it after a couple of hours of searching in total. Towed it back without incident. Jack was careful not to even look in the direction of Nate's lever, though they paths didn't come within sight of it. For the next weekend, they'd gone. Jack visited a couple of stores, including a bookstore, got his SUV back from the mechanic with a warning to avoid any more joyriding in the desert. On Saturday, Jack headed back to Sydney. Jack parked a little way out from the small town near Nate, then loaded his new backpack, camping gear, and things he thought to bring for Nate, and then he started walking. He figured that walking would be the least trail. He knew that while not many people camped out in the desert, it wasn't unheard of. Didn't want to raise suspicions. Jack bought more books for Nate. Recent books, magazines, newspapers, some things that would catch Nate up with what was happening in the world. Others were just good books to read. He spent the weekend with Nate, then headed out again, telling Nate that he'd be back again soon. But he had other things to do first. Over 4 months later, Jack was back to see Nate again. This time he brought a laptop with him, a specially modified laptop that had a solar recharger, special filters and seals to keep out the sand, and a satellite link set up, a special keyboard joystick that Jack hoped a 15-foot rattlesnake would be able to use, and it had been hacked not to give out the location of the satellite. After that, Jack emailed Nate to keep in touch, but still visited him fairly regularly, at least twice a year. After the first year, Jack quit his job for some reason. With the wisdom he'd been given and the knowledge that he could live for over 50 years, working a 9-to-5 job for someone else didn't really seem worthwhile anymore. Jack went back to school. Eventually, Jack started writing. Perhaps because of the wisdom, or perhaps because of his new perspective, he wrote well. People liked what he wrote. He became well known for it. After a while, Jack bought an RV and started traveling around the country for book signings and readings. But he still remembered to drop by and visit Nate occasionally. On these visits, Nate seemed quite unusual. Not that Nate had been a fountain of joy lately. Jack's best guess was that Nate was still missing Samuel. Though Jack tried, he still hadn't been able to replace Samuel in Nate's eyes. Nate had been getting quieter with each visit, but on this visit, it didn't even speak when Jack walked out of the river. He nodded at Jack and then went back to staring into the desert. Jack, respecting Nate's silence, sat down and waited. After a few minutes, Nate spoke. Jack, I have someone to introduce you to. Jack looked surprised. Someone to introduce me to? Jack looked around and then carefully back at Nate. Something to do with the big guy? No, replied Nate. This is more personal. I want you to meet my son. Nate looked over at them near a sand dune. Sammy. Jack watched as 4-foot-long desert rattlesnake crawled from behind the sand dune and up the stone. At the base of the letter, Yo, Jack. Jack saw the new, much smaller snake. Yo, Sammy, replied Jack. Jack looked at Nate. Named after Samuel, I assume. Nate nodded. Jack, could you show Sammy around for me? When Nate unwrapped himself from the lever and slithered over to the edge of the stone, I looked across the sands. When Samuel first told me about the world, brought me books and pictures, I wished that I could go and see it. I wanted to see the great forests, the canyons, the cities, and even other deserts to see what they felt like and smelled like. And if they smelled the same. I want my son to have the chance to see the world before he becomes bound here like I have been. He's seen the pictures of the computer that you brought me, but I hear it's not the same. That being out there is different. I want him to have that. You can do that for me, Jack. Jack nodded. This is obviously very important to Nate, so Jack didn't even joke about talking a rattlesnake out to see the world. Yeah, I can do that for you, Nate. Is that all you need? Jack could sense that there was something more. Nate looked at Sammy. Sammy looked back at Nate for a second and said, Oh yeah, I gotta go back in a little bit. Jack, nice to meet you. Sammy slithered back over the dune and out of sight. Nate watched Sammy disappear and looked back at Jack. Jack, this is my first son, my first daughter. Through all the years, I didn't even want to know what I had to go through for me to find a mate. Nate grinned to himself. Anyway, I had a son for a reason. I'm tired and ready for it to be over. I need a replacement, Jack. And so, ready to see the world. And you wanted him to watch the liver for you while you were gone. No, Jack. You better guess than that. Already figured it out. I'm bound here. There's only one way for me to leave here. And I'm ready. It's my time to die, Jack. Look more closely at Nate. You can tell Nate thought about this, probably for quite a while. Jack had trouble imagining what it must be like to be as old as Nate. Jack could already tell that in maybe another 100 or 200 years he might be getting tired of life himself. Jack could understand Samuel's decision. And now, Nate's. So, all Jack said was, What do you want me to do? Nate nodded. Thanks, Jack. I only want two things. One, show Sammy around the world. Let him get his full of it until he's ready to come back here and take over. 2, give me the fourth request. I can't decide to die, not any more than you can. And I won't die of old age like you will eventually will. Even though it'll be a long time from now, I need to be killed. Once I'm back here, ready to take over, I'll be able to die. I need you to kill me.
I've thought about how poisons and that other drugs won't work on me. I've seen pictures of snakes that were shot. Some of them live for days, so that's out. 2. So I want you to bring back a sword. Nate turned away to look back at the dunes where Sammy had gone. I'd say an axe, but that's somewhat undignified. Putting my head on the ground for a chopping block like that. No, I like a sword. Time-honored way. Going out. A dignified way to die. And more importantly, it should work, even on me. Would you do that for me, Jack? Nate turned back to look at Jack. Yeah, Nate. Replied Jack solemnly. I think I can handle that. Nate nodded. Good. He turned back towards the dune and shouted, Sammy, Jack's about ready to leave. He quietly texted Jack. Jack didn't have anything to say to him, so he waited for Sammy to make it back and leave her. Nodded to her. Nodded a final time to Nate, and then headed back into the desert, Sammy following. Over the next few years, Sammy and Jack kept in touch with Nate through email as they went on their adventures. They made the goal of visiting every country in the world, and did a respectable job of it. Sammy had a natural gift for language, as Jack expected he would, and even ended up acting as a translator for Jack in a few countries. Jack managed to keep the talking rattlesnake hidden, even so. By the time they were nearing the end of the tour of the country, Sammy had only been spotted a few times. While there have been several people that have seen enough to solve greatly, nobody really had any evidence to prove anything. While a few wild rumours and stories followed Jack and Sammy around, nothing ever hit the newspapers or the general public. When they finished the tour of the country, Jack suggested that they try some undersea diving. They did, and spelunking. Did that too. Sammy had come to realize why Jack was stalling. After talking to his dad about it over email, he figured out that Jack was probably didn't want to kill Nate. Nate told Sammy that humans can be squeamish about killing friends and acquaintances, so Sammy eventually put his tail down, as he did, have a foot, and told Jack that it was time. He was ready to go back and take the duties from his dad. Jack decided to delay a little more by insisting that they go back to Japan and buy an appropriate sword. He even stretched it out a little more by getting the lessons on how to use the sword. But eventually, he learned as much as he was likely to do without dedicating his life to it, and definitely confident enough to take the head off the snake. It was time to head back and see Nate. When they go back into the US, Jack got the old RV out of storage where he had left it after they toured for 50 states. He loaded up Sammy on the sword and headed out into the desert. When they got into a small town Jack had been trying to find all those years ago, Jack was in a funk. He didn't feel like walking all the way out there. Not only that, but he wanted to figure out the travel time correctly, and it was late afternoon, so he didn't have time to spend the night down. If he waited one more night, he wouldn't have his resolve. He decided that he'd go ahead and drive the RV out there, just going to be this once, and Jack would go back and cover the tracks afterwards, or to be able to make it out there by nightfall. They drove. They pulled the road and headed into the desert. Everything went well until they got to the sand dunes. Jack had been nursing the RV along the whole time, over the rocks, the creek bed, spreading the engine a few times. He almost got stuck. When they came to the dunes, Jack really didn't think about it. He just downshifted and headed up the first one. But by the third dune, Jack started to regret that he had decided to drive on the sand. The RV was fishtailing and losing traction. Jack was having a hard time having to work it up slowly. He was trying to keep from losing control. Each time they came over the top, sliding down the other side. Sammy had come up to sit in the passenger seat, coiled up and laughing at Jack's driving. When they came over the top, the fourth dune, the biggest one yet, Jack saw this was the final dune. The stone, the lever, and Sam and Nate waited below. Jack put on the brakes, but he'd gone a little too far. The RV started slipping down the other side. Jack tried turning the wheel, but didn't have enough traction. Bumped the brakes, no response. They started sliding down faster and faster. Jack felt this shock go through them. Suddenly, he realized that they were heading for the lever. He looked down. The RV was directly on course for it. If Jack didn't do something, the RV would hit it. And he was about to end humanity. Jack steered more frantically, trying to get traction. It wasn't working. June was too stupid to stand to move. In a split second, Jack realized that his only chance would be once he hit the stone around the lever. He would have enough traction. Just a second before he hit the lever. He wouldn't have time to stop. He would be able to steer away. Jack took a better grip of the wheel, steering wheel, and tried to turn the RV a little bit. Every little bit would help. He had to time the turn just right. When the RV got to the bottom of the dune, sledding at amazing speed in the sand, just before he reached the stone, Jack looked across and checked that they were still heading for the lever. They were. But Jack noticed something else. He hadn't seen from the top of the dune. Nathan wasn't wrapped around the lever. He was off to the side of the lever, but still on the stone, waiting for them. The problem was, they were sitting on the same side of the lever that Jack was picked to steer towards, to avoid the lever. The RV was already starting to shift that way a little. In the mad rush across the sand, there was no way that Jack was going to be able to go around the lever to the other side. Jack had an instant realization. He was going to either have to hit the lever, run over Nate, or glance over at Sammy. So Sammy had realized the same thing. Jack took a firmer grip on the steering wheel as the RV ran up the stone, shouting at the same time as he pulled the steering wheel. "Better Nate than lever!" He ran over the snake at the end.